The call came at 6:47 in the morning, and Amara Osei answered it the way she answered everything before 8 a.m. Badly. "If this is about the invoice, I already sent it twice," she said, eyes still closed, phone pressed sideways against her pillow. Silence. Then, "Invoice?" The voice was low, slightly confused, and, even in her half-conscious state, undeniably good. Amara opened one eye. "Who is this?" "I think," the voice said carefully, "I have the wrong number." "You think?" "My Korean is... My contact saved the number wrong. I apologize. I'll..." "Wait." Both eyes open now. "You were about to hang up on me without telling me who you are. That's incredibly rude." Another pause, longer this time. Then, with what sounded like reluctant amusement, "Park Jinho. And you?" "Amara. And since you woke me up, you owe me 30 seconds of conversation minimum. That is Nigerian law." "Is it?" "Absolutely. Article 12. He laughed. She felt it in her sternum before she was fully awake enough to know she felt anything. It was the kind of laugh that didn't perform. It just happened, like it surprised him too. "I'm not sure that law applies to Korean nationals who dial incorrectly." "It especially applies. We have bilateral agreements." She sat up. Light came through the thin curtain of her Seoul studio apartment, a pale November gray, the kind that made the city look like it was drawn in pencil. She'd been in Korea 8 months. This was the first morning it had felt interesting before coffee. "What were you actually trying to do at 6:47 a.m.? "Call my sister. She's getting on a flight. I wanted to tell her something." "What?" "That's private." "You called a stranger and woke her up, and the content is private?" "Yes." Amara pressed her lips together. "Fine. Call your sister, but if you dial wrong again, you owe me breakfast." The silence this time was different, warmer. "I don't know your address." "Then you better get the number right," she said, and hung up. She stared at the ceiling for 3 full minutes after that. The pencil gray light shifted. Outside, the first subway of the morning rang past 6 blocks away. She told herself she wasn't going to think about the voice. She thought about it until her coffee was cold. If you've ever tried to fall in love with someone whose whole world runs on different instructions than yours, stay right here. This story is for you. She was a graphic designer working remotely for a Lagos-based agency that operated cheerfully on West African time, which meant her mornings in Seoul were free and her evenings were chaotic. She had come to Korea because her best friend BC had moved here for a PhD, and because Amara, at 28, had decided that staying in the same city she'd lived in for her whole life was the kind of decision that quietly killed people. She had also, if she was honest, come because she needed to be somewhere where no one knew her when she was 22 and made the specific mistake she had made. Seoul had seemed suitably far. She liked it more than she had expected. She liked the order of it, the way the subway announced everything twice, the way restaurants brought you water before you sat down, the way people formed perfect queues for things Lagos would have treated as a contact sport. She found it peaceful. She found it occasionally very lonely. She had BC, who was wonderful and also constantly working. She had her screens. She had early mornings that no one interrupted. Until 6:47 on a Tuesday. Jinho called back at noon. She was eating ramyun standing at her kitchen counter and almost dropped the chopsticks when she saw the number. Unknown, Seoul code. She answered with her mouth still slightly full. "You called your sister?" "I did." A beat. "How did you know it was me?" "I didn't know anyone else in Seoul at 6:47 this morning, so the sample size was limited." Fair. She could hear something in her background, machinery maybe, a workspace. "I wanted to apologize again, properly." "You were already fairly proper." "My sister says I under-apologize." Amara set the chopsticks down. "What did you want to tell her before the flight?" "That's private." You said it was private. I'm asking again." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "That I was proud of her. She got into a program in Canada, art restoration. She's been working toward it for 3 years. Something in Amara's chest did a small, inconvenient thing. She looked at the ceiling. That's a good thing to call about. She already knew. I just wanted to say it one more time. Jinho, she surprised herself with his name. It landed differently out loud than in her head. Not the compressed Western version, but all 4 syllables, like he looked at it carefully before speaking it. I'm not sure that law applies to Korean nationals who dial incorrectly. It especially applies. We have bilateral agreements. She sat up. He looked at her cold coffee, her tilted ramyun, and the pencil gray light of a Seoul November. Yes, I would actually like that. Saturday arrived with the kind of colds that Seoul wore like a second skin in November. Sharp, clean, and completely indifferent to anyone who had not packed properly. Amara had not packed properly. She stood outside the cafe Jinho had texted her, a small place tucked between a convenience store and a laundromat and Mop-Hokru, the kind of establishment that had no English signage and no apology about it, wearing a wool coat that was adequate for Lagos winters and completely insufficient for this. She was contemplating going back inside to buy a heat pack from the convenience store when a man came around the corner and stopped when he saw her. She knew immediately. She didn't know how she knew. He was tall, taller than she'd built him in her head from just a voice, with the kind of face that looked like it had learned stillness as a discipline. Dark jacket, no scarf, apparently unbothered by the cold, which she found immediately annoying. He looked at her. She looked at him. "You're freezing," he said. "I'm fine. Your shoulders are touching your ears. That's just how I stand." He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a heat pack, the kind you crack to activate, and held it out without comment. She stared at it. She stared at him. She took it with as much dignity as she had remaining, which was not very much. "You brought a spare," she said. "I checked the forecast. You've been in Seoul 8 months. I assumed you hadn't bought a proper coat yet." "What made you assume that?" "You're from Lagos. Lagos gets cold." He looked at her coat. He said nothing. She pulled it tighter. "Okay," she said, "it does not get this cold." He smiled. It was not the large performative smile she associated with people trying to make her comfortable. It was smaller than that, and for reasons she did not immediately examine, it landed harder. "Come inside. They have sikkie. It's warm." "What's sikkie?" "Rice punch. Sweet. You'll like it." "You don't know what I like." "Not yet," he said simply, and opened the door. She followed him inside, telling herself she was only doing it because of the cold. The cafe was warm and low-lit, the kind of place that seemed to exist in a pocket of time slightly behind the rest of the city. An older woman behind the counter looked at Jinho and then at Amara with the particular calibrated attention of someone who had known Jinho for years and had strong opinions about everyone he brought through the door. Jinho said something in Korean. The older woman's eyebrows moved. She disappeared into the back. "What did you say to her?" Amara asked. "I told her you were a friend visiting from Nigeria." What did her eyebrows say back? He glanced at her sideways. She said, "Oh, interesting," in the tone my mother uses when she means, "I have questions." "How many questions?" "Roughly 40. She's narrowing them down." The sikkie arrived in ceramic cups, and Amara wrapped her hands around hers and took the first sip and immediately wanted to close her eyes, but didn't because she had a reputation to maintain. "Okay," she said, "you were right about this." "I'm usually right about warm things." "Is that your personality, just being right about warm things quietly?" "I work in building materials, specifically thermal insulation, so yes, professionally, yes." She looked at him over the rim of the cup. That is the most accidentally perfect answer. How so? A man who called a stranger at dawn and brought a spare heat pack to a first meeting works in thermal insulation. She set the cup down. "You specialize in making things not freeze." Something shifted in his expression. Careful, then more open. He looked at her the way people looked at something they hadn't expected to be moved by. "I hadn't thought of it that way," he said. "I'm a graphic designer. I specialize in making things visible." She shrugged. "We're professionally complementary." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Amara, can I ask you something direct?" "I've been waiting for direct since you apologized twice before noon on a Tuesday." "When you told me you owed me breakfast, did you mean it?" She picked the cup back up. Would I have answered when you called back if I didn't? He accepted this. They stayed in the cafe for 2.5 hours. The older woman behind the counter brought food they hadn't ordered, small plates, things warm and pickled and folded in careful ways. Amara ate everything. She asked what each thing was. Jinho told her and watched her reactions with an attention he didn't entirely conceal, and she noticed him noticing, and neither of them said anything about it yet. The next 2 weeks operated on a logic that Amara refused to analyze too closely. They were not dating. She was clear about this in her own mind. They had had breakfast once. They texted with a frequency that she categorized as friendly. He sent her the Korean name for things she mentioned not knowing. She texted him a photo of a jollof rice she cooked in her small Seoul kitchen, and he responded with a string of questions so specific and interested that she spent 40 minutes explaining the difference between party jollof and home jollof, which was a conversation she had never had with anyone outside of Nigeria. "What makes it party jollof?" he asked. "The fire is bigger, and something about the smoke and the bottom catching slightly. The smoky part at the bottom is called the party." She paused, then typed, "Also the energy. You can't make party jollof alone. It doesn't taste the same." He replied, "That might be the most specific thing I've ever heard about food and community." She replied, "You haven't met a Nigerian grandmother." He replied, "I would like to." She put her phone face down on the table and stared at the wall for 60 seconds. He texted again, "That was forward. I apologize." She picked the phone up. "No, it was just surprisingly direct for someone who works in insulation. You told me you appreciated direct." "I do." She stared at the screen. "My grandmother is in Accra. She's Ghanaian. My mother married Nigerian. Family's complicated." "Mine too. Different reasons." They didn't push it further, not yet. But that night, Amara lay in bed in her studio apartment listening to the distant lost subway and thought about the fact that a man she had met by accident twice was asking about her grandmother with what appeared to be genuine interest. She thought about the heat pack still in her coat pocket because she hadn't thrown it out. She thought about the word yet, not yet, the way he'd said it when she told him he didn't know what she liked. She was not falling. She was simply noticing. There was a difference. She was almost certain there was a difference. The misunderstanding happened on a Wednesday, as misunderstandings between people from different worlds often do, quietly and with the best intentions on both sides. BC insisted on meeting him. "You've been texting this man for 2 weeks and you haven't introduced me, Amara? That's a violation." So they met for dinner. Amara, BC, and Jinho at a Korean Nigerian fusion restaurant that BC had found with the enthusiasm of someone who had made it her personal mission to document every culturally improbable dining experience in Seoul. BC arrived first and texted Amara, "He's already here. Amara, you didn't tell me he had that face." Amara replied, "Be normal, please." BC replied, "I'm always normal." She was not normal. She was warm and loud and had the specific social energy of someone who treated every stranger as a close friend she hadn't briefed yet. Jinho, who had been raised in a household of careful greeting protocols, shook her hand when she went to hug him, and they collided briefly in the trisher between the two gestures, and BC said, "Oh, we're a hugging household, come on then," and Jinho admirably adopted. "He adopted," Amara told him quietly as they sat. "She moves fast." "She's been moving fast since 2014. You get used to it." BC, across the table, was already watching them with a smile she was doing a terrible job of hiding. "So," she said to Jinho, "wrong number?" "Wrong number," he confirmed. "And you looked her up in the tenant directory?" "I did." BC looked at Amara. Amara looked at the menu. BC looked back at Jinho. "Okay," she said. "I like you." Jinho nodded once, serious. "Thank you." "That's not a small thing. I don't like people quickly." "She does," Amara said. "I don't," BC insisted. "Amara, I don't. You told the delivery man last week that he seemed like a good person and you hoped he found love. That was genuine." The dinner was easy in the way that good company makes things easy. Conversations spilling between English and fragments of Korean and Yoruba expressions BC deployed untranslated and with confidence. Jinho asked questions. He was good at questions, specific, unhurried, the kind that showed he'd been paying attention to what came before. BC approved. Amara could see her approving in real time, and it was both comforting and alarming. The misunderstanding came at the end of the meal, over the bill. Jinho reached for it, Amara reached for it.
Their hands touched briefly, warmly, and for a half second neither of them moved. Then they both let go simultaneously and BC pretended to look at the window with incredible focus. "Let me," Jinho said carefully. "We split it," Amara said. "You're a guest. I live in Seoul. You're a guest in this restaurant. I suggested it. BC suggested it." Jinho looked at BC. BC lifted her hands. "I'm not in this." "In Korean custom," Jinho said carefully, "when a man invites—" "I know," Amara said, "and I respect it. But in my house, when a man pays for everything on a third meeting, my grandmother starts planning things." The table went quiet. BC made a sound that was technically a cough. "Your grandmother," Jinho said, "is in Accra." "She has reach," Amara said. He looked at her. There was a pause that was 3 seconds and felt like 30. Then the corner of his mouth moved. "We split it," he said. "Thank you." They split it. Under the table, Amara's heart was doing something completely unreasonable that she planned to address privately and never speak of. Tell me in the comments, can you already see it? Because these two absolutely cannot. Drop something below. We're watching this together. Walking back, BC fell behind on her phone with the practiced subtlety of someone performing subtlety very unsubtly, leaving Amara and Jinho 3 steps ahead in the cold. "Your friend," Jinho said. "I know. She's very, I know, warm." That was going to be a different word. "It changed," he said. "A beat. Your friend cares about you. It shows in how she watches." Amara looked ahead at the street. The November city, all lit shopfronts and pale breath in cold air.
She's been watching out for me since we were 19. She followed me to Seoul because I needed someone who knew me before what? She had not meant to say that much. She felt him not pushing. The specific quality of his silences, which she had begun to catalog without realizing she was doing it. He did not fill space to fill it. He left room. "Before I got sensible," she said finally. It was not the true answer, and he probably knew it wasn't. He accepted it anyway. "I have someone like that," he said. "My sister. She's the person who calls me before I realize I need to be called." "Like at 6:47 in the morning?" Exactly like that. He looked sideways at her. They were at the corner where their routes divided. "Amara. Jinho, I would like to see you again. Not accidentally." She felt the November cold all the way to the fact of it. The bare, uncomplicated directness of him. No performance, no strategy. Just a statement offered and waiting. "Saturday," she said. "Same cafe. My turn to be right about something warm." He nodded once. Something in him settled. She saw it. The small release of a breath held carefully. "Saturday," he said. He turned and walked. She watched his back for exactly 3 seconds before she turned too, back toward BC, who was no longer even pretending to be on her phone. "Don't," Amara said. "You haven't said a word. You're saying it with your entire body." BC linked her arm through Amara's and they walked into the cold city together. "He said your name," BC said quietly, like it was a decision. Amara said nothing, but she did not throw away the heat pack. The mothers found out on the same weekend, which in retrospect was the universe being either very efficient or very cruel. Jinho's mother called him on a Friday evening while Amara was sitting across from him at the small cafe in Mapogu, which had quietly become their place in the way that places become yours without any formal agreement. She watched him look at the screen, watched something tighten briefly in his jaw, and watched him answer anyway. "Ama?" He listened. His eyes went to the window. He said 3 words in Korean that Amara did not catch, and then he said clearly and in English for reasons she did not fully understand until later, "She's a designer. She's from Ghana and Nigeria. She's sitting across from me right now." Silence from the phone. Amara raised her eyebrows at him. He gave her the very specific expression of a man who had just made a tactical decision he was still evaluating. "Was that intentional?" she asked after he hung up. She was going to find out. "You told her while I was present. So you couldn't accuse me of hiding you." She stared at him. That is a deeply considered move for a man who claims to be straightforward. "I am straightforward," he said. "I'm also practical." "What did she say when she was silent?" He picked up his sikya. "She said she would like to meet you." In the silence? In what came after the silence? Amara looked at the ceramic cup in her own hands. 3 months of Saturdays had accumulated between them by now. 3 months of the cafe and walks through Mapogu, and one evening at a gallery where she had explained color theory to him for 40 minutes because he had asked one question and she had never successfully answered one question briefly. 3 months of his silences and her talking, and the specific, undeniable feeling of being known by someone who was paying attention on purpose. She had told BC reluctantly that she thought she was in it. BC had said, "I know, I've known since the bill." She had told her mother in Lagos, more reluctantly, that she was spending time with someone. Her mother had asked 3 questions in sequence. Is he a good man? Is he serious? Does he make you feel safe? Amara had answered yes to all 3, and her mother had gone quiet the way mothers go quiet when they are either praying or planning, and sometimes both. "My mother also wants to meet you," Amara said now. "When?" "She's coming to Seoul in 3 weeks. She told me last night." Jinho set his cup down. "Your mother is coming to Seoul. She says she needs to see where I'm living. She has been saying this for 8 months. I believe she is also coming to see you, but she will frame it as architecture tourism." "I would like to meet her." "You haven't met a Nigerian mother before." "I haven't." "They interview differently than Korean mothers." "How so?" Amara considered this carefully. "Korean mothers, from what I understand, evaluate through observation, indirect. They watch how you behave and draw conclusions." "That's accurate." "Nigerian mothers ask you directly what your intentions are within the first 20 minutes, and your facial expression during the answer is also evidence." He absorbed this. "So the interview is the answer and the performance of the answer simultaneously." "Exactly. And my mother is Ghanaian Nigerian, which means she brings both methodologies and deploys whichever one you're least prepared for." He nodded slowly. "I'll be prepared." "Jinho, no one is prepared." His mother arrived in Seoul. She did not live far, 2 hours by train, but she had never come to visit him in his apartment, which Amara later understood was itself a communication. She arrived on a Sunday morning 3 weeks before Amara's mother was due, which meant Jinho called Amara on Saturday night with a tone she had not heard from him before. "She wants to cook," he said. "That's nice." "She wants to cook for you." Amara sat up straighter. "When?" "Tomorrow. She says she wants to meet the woman I've been spending my Saturdays with for 3 months." "You told her about the Saturdays?" "She counted. She noticed I was not available on Saturdays and she counted backwards." "Your mother counted backwards from your Saturday availability to deduce a relationship?" "She's very thorough." Amara pressed her fingers to her temple. "Jinho, I need you to know that this is the kind of information that should come with more than 14 hours of notice." "I know. I'm sorry. She moves quickly when she decides something." "What has she decided?" "Silence, the warm kind." "She's decided you're real," he said quietly. "I think before now she wasn't sure. I don't bring people home. I haven't in a long time." She felt the weight of that, what it cost him to say it plainly. She had learned over 3 months that Jinho's directness was not effortless. It was a choice he made each time, carefully. The choosing was the intimacy. "Okay. What does she cook?" "Doenjang jjigae, japchae, probably 3 other things she'll decide on in the morning." "I'm bringing something." "You don't have to." "I am bringing something," she said firmly. "I was raised. I cannot arrive at a woman's kitchen empty-handed. This is non-negotiable." He paused. "What will you bring?" "Chin-chin. It's a fried snack, small, sweet. My grandmother's recipe, roughly, adopted for what I can find in Seoul." "She won't know what it is." "That's the point. I'm bringing something from my world the same way she's offering something from hers. It's a gesture. Do you understand?" "Yes," he said, and the way he said it, steady, certain, told her he did. The Sunday began well. His apartment was clean in the way of someone who had cleaned it with specific effort. I noticed the precise alignment of things, the particular absence of clutter that was less natural tidiness and more careful preparation. His mother was already in the kitchen when Amara arrived. She was a small woman with a straight posture and the eyes of someone who processed information at a speed that didn't show on her face. Jinho introduced them. His mother bowed. Amara, who had practiced this, bowed back. His mother looked at her for 2 full seconds, then said something in Korean. "She says your Korean is good," Jinho translated. "I said 안녕하세요," Amara said. "She's being generous," he said, and his mother apparently caught the tone of this because she made a short sound that was definitely laughter. Amara raised her out the tin of chin-chin. This is for you. It's a West African fried snack. I made it this morning. I wasn't sure of the exact translation, so I wrote the name on the lid. His mother took the tin. She opened it, looked inside, looked up at Amara, and took one. She chewed. Her expression moved through several stages of evaluation. Then she said something to Jinho. She says it's crispy and not too sweet, and she wants to know the recipe. Amara felt something loosen in her chest. Tell her I'll write it out for her. His mother smiled, small, genuine, and turned back to the kitchen with the tin. That went well, Amara murmured to Jinho. It did, he agreed quietly. She took the tin with her. That means she likes you. What would not taking the tin mean? She would have placed it on the table and offered you some. The difference between keeping it and sharing it. Yes. Amara stored this. She was always storing things about his world, cataloging the difference between what was said and what was meant, the gap between gesture and language where so much actually lived. She had started a note on her phone 3 weeks in, half joking, called Korean things that mean something else. It was 11 pages long. The chaos began at lunch. It began with a seating arrangement that no one had discussed and therefore satisfied no one's unconscious expectations. It escalated when Amara, attempting to compliment the doenjang jjigae, it reminded her of a fermented locust bean soup her grandmother made, ogiri, and spent 4 minutes trying to explain fermented locust beans to a woman who had strong opinions about fermentation and expressed them at length in Korean, while Jinho translated with increasing diplomatic effort. She says fermented soybeans are superior. I'm not disagreeing. She says she will make you soybean paste from scratch to compare. That's generous. Tell her, she says your grandmother is wrong about fermentation. Amara put her spoon down. Jinho, those are her words, roughly. Tell her my grandmother has been fermenting things for 67 years and never once been wrong about anything. He translated. His mother listened. Then she picked up the tin of chin-chin, held it up slightly, and said something. She says, he paused, that a woman who can fry like this probably has a grandmother worth arguing with. Amara stared. Is that a compliment? From my mother, yes, that's a significant compliment. It sounded like a challenge. In our family, those are the same thing. Amara looked at her mother, who was watching her with the careful eyes of a woman who was deciding something. Amara picked up her spoon. Tell her I agree, she said, and I hope they meet someday so they can argue properly. His mother listened to the translation. Then she laughed, really laughed, full and unguarded, and said something that made Jinho go still beside her. What? Asked Amara. She said, he stopped, a beat. She said, this one has good bones. The kitchen was warm, the jjigae was steaming, the tin of chin-chin sat beside her mother's elbow like it belonged there. Amara looked at Jinho. He was looking at the table, and something in the line of his profile, the careful stillness that was less disciplined now and more feeling held under pressure, made her want to reach across and put her hand on his. She didn't do it, not yet, but she felt the pull of it, specific and undeniable. The real chaos waited until the following week. It arrived in the form of Amara's mother, Mrs. Abina Ozai Mensah, 54 years old, 5 feet 3 inches tall, and carrying the specific gravitational force of a woman who had navigated 2 cultures her entire life and considered both her territory. She arrived on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, she had an opinion about Amara's kitchen organization, a rescheduled flight so she could stay an extra 4 days, and a request to meet Jinho that was phrased as a suggestion and was not a suggestion. They met at a restaurant Amara chose, neutral ground, no one's cuisine, modern soul fusion. Jinho arrived first because he was constitutionally incapable of being late. Amara arrived with her mother and watched him stand when they entered, watched him bow slightly, and watched her mother look at the bow with an expression of a woman receiving data. He bowed, her mother murmured to Amara. It's a greeting, Mum. I know what it is, I'm noting it. She greeted Jinho in English, warm, direct, the charm fully deployed. He responded well. He had prepared, Amara could see, not stiffly, but in the way of someone who had thought carefully about what this moment was and decided to be fully present for it. The first 20 minutes were good. The food was ordered. Her mother asked Jinho about his work with the calibrated interest of a woman who was actually listening and also building a case. He answered well. He asked her about her work. She ran a tailoring business in Lagos, high-end fabric, 20 years of clientele. And the questions he asked were specific enough that her mother glanced at Amara once with an expression that said, he did his homework. Amara had not told him to do homework. He had simply done it. The problem arrived over the main course in the form of a question her mother asked in Twi, a test, or a moment of comfort, or both, and Amara answered in Twi, and the table briefly became a conversation her mother was having with her daughter in a language Jinho did not speak. He was quiet. Not uncomfortable, she had learned to read his quiet, but present, waiting, not performing patience, but actually practicing it. Then her mother turned to him and said, in English, very clearly, "What are your intentions toward my daughter?" The table paused. Amara set her fork down. Jinho looked at her mother steadily. He did not flinch, which she noted. He did not perform confidence either, which she also noted. "I intend," he said, "to continue being the kind of person she chooses to spend her Saturdays with. I intend to learn what I don't know and ask when I'm unsure. I intended to take her seriously." A pause. "I'm aware that I'm from a different world than she is. I don't think that's a problem. I think it's something we figure out together, if she wants to." Her mother looked at him for a long moment. "My daughter is not simple," she said. "I know. It's one of the things I like most about her." Her mother picked up her fork. "Good," she said. And that was that. Except it was not that, because her mother looked at Amara when Jinho turned to pour water, and her eyes said everything that her voice did not. The recognition, the concern, the specific tenderness of a mother who sees her daughter seen by someone and is not yet sure whether to be relieved or terrified. Amara looked back at her. She gave the smallest nod. Her mother pressed her lips together and returned to her food. The catastrophe, when it came, was no one's fault. This made it worse. It came from a group chat. Jinho's family had a group chat. His mother, his two aunts, his older brother who lived in Busan, and his mother, in the warmth of having met Amara, had shared a photo she had taken on Sunday without telling them. Amara and Jinho at the kitchen table, his hand near hers on the wood surface, both of them looking at something the camera couldn't see, and something in their posture, the specific closeness of people who have learned each other's physical space and stopped being careful about it, told the whole story without a word. Jinho's older brother called him. He took the call in the other room while Amara was helping his mother portion leftover japchae into containers. She heard the tone of it. Low, rapid, the specific register of a sibling conversation that had a history behind it. She didn't understand the words. She understood enough. Later, walking home in the cold, she asked. "He has concerns," Jinho said. About the distance, not the geography, the cultural distance. He thinks it will become complicated." "It is complicated. It already is." "I know." "What did you say to him?" He was quiet for a moment. The city moved around them, a bus, a convenience store open and fluorescent, a couple walking in the opposite direction. And Jinho said, carefully, "I told him that complicated things are not the same as wrong things, and that I was not asking for his opinion, but I was telling him so he heard it from me." She stopped walking. He stopped too and turned to face her on the pavement, and in the cold night light of Seoul she could see everything in his face that he usually kept still. The weight of the call, the cost of the conversation, and underneath all of it something steady and decided. "You told him that?" she said. "Yes." "Without asking me first?" "Yes." He held her gaze. I can apologize if that was—" "No," she said. "Don't apologize for that." She looked at him. The cold November color, the pale city light, the fact of him standing there having said an uncomfortable true thing to his family because he had decided something and acted on it. She felt the weight of the 3 months and the heat pack in her coat. She still had it, had moved it from the old coat to the new one she had finally bought, the proper winter weight, sole adequate, and she thought, I am so far in. "Jinho," she said. "Amara, I need you to know that I'm—" She stopped.
I'm not good at saying certain things before I'm ready. I know, but I want you to know that what you just said to your brother was... She exhaled into the cold air, a small cloud of breath. It mattered. It matters. He looked at her. He reached out and tucked her scarf. She had a proper scarf now, bought from the market where he once pointed out the best heat packs, more firmly around her collar. A small adjustment, a decision. Saturday, he said. Same cafe? She almost laughed. Same cafe. They went their separate directions into the cold city. She waited until she turned the corner before she let herself feel the full size of what was happening. It was large. It was frightening. It was, she thought, completely and utterly hers. If you're cringing and smiling at the same time right now, you're exactly where this story wants you. Hit that like button. The best part is coming. Don't go anywhere. The cafe was closed on the Saturday after everything happened. Not symbolically closed, physically closed. A handwritten sign on the door in Korean that Amara had learned enough to read. Family matter. Back next week. Sorry. She stood in front of it in her proper winter coat, scarf tucked exactly the way he had tucked it, and felt the specific absurdity of the universe choosing this particular Saturday to intervene. Jinho arrived 2 minutes after her. He read the sign. He looked at Amara. She looked at him. Family matter, she said. Yes. Even the cafe has one this week? He almost smiled. There's a place 3 streets over, tteokbokki and fish cakes. It's not the same, but it's warm. Let's go. They walked in the kind of quiet that had changed quality over 3 months. No longer the quiet of 2 people being careful, but the quiet of 2 people who were tired and cold and had been carrying things since Wednesday and knew the other person knew it. The new place was smaller, louder, and run by a man who seems to have no interest in anyone's interior life, which was a relief. They sat at a counter facing the street window. The tteokbokki arrived in a clay pot still bubbling. Amara wrapped her hands around it without thinking. Jinho watched her do it. Your brother called again, she said. It wasn't a question. Thursday night. And? He's not cruel, Jinho said carefully. He's afraid of something specific. What specifically? He turned his cup in his hands. My father left when I was 11. My brother was 15. He watched my mother navigate that alone, and it formed him a certain way. He measures every relationship by whether it has the architecture to stay. She looked at the side of his face. He was watching the street, the passing coats and breath clouds, and the ordinary Friday night of a city that did not know or care about any of this. He thinks I won't stay, she said. He thinks the distance between your worlds will eventually become weight neither of you can carry. What do you think? He turned to face her, direct, unhurried, the way he did everything that mattered. I think weight is different from gravity, he said. Weight is what crushes you. Gravity is what keeps you in orbit. She stared at him. Did you just use an astrophysics metaphor for our relationship? I work in building materials. Structural integrity is a professional concern. Jinho, that was possibly the most romantic thing you have said in 3 months, and you framed it as a load-airing calculation. The corner of his mouth moved, then the rest of it. She watched the smile arrive, not the small, careful one she had cataloged from the beginning, but something wider, surprised by itself, and she felt it the way she had felt the very first laugh on that Tuesday morning, in her sternum, unreasonably. I'm not always good at, he began. You're very good at it. You're just quiet about it, which is, she looked down at the bubbling pot. It's one of the things I like most about you. His words to her mother returned. He recognized them. She saw him recognize them. Neither of them looked away. It was the first time they had said it. Not the large word, not yet, but the smaller, true thing that lived just underneath it. One of the things I like most about you. Not a confession, a door opened and left open. They stayed at the counter for 2 hours. The clay pot was replaced by tea, the street outside went from Friday busy to Friday quieter, the traffic thinning to couples and people walking home alone. At some point, Amara told him about the mistake she had come to Seoul to get far from. Not all of it, but the shape of it. A man who was certain about her in the beginning, and less certain in increments, until one day she looked up and found she had been slowly erased from her own relationship without a formal announcement. He didn't leave, he just stopped arriving, and I kept showing up to a version of things that had already ended without anyone telling me. Jinho listened. He did not say it was terrible or that the man was a fool or any of the things people said to fill the silence after painful things. He said, after a moment, "Is that why you check?" "What check?" "Whether I mean what I say. You look at me right after I say something important, just for a second, like you're verifying." She had not known she did this. The recognition of it landed strangely, to be seen doing something you didn't know you were doing, to have someone pay attention at that resolution. "Yes, probably yes." "I mean what I say," he told her. "I don't always say the full thing quickly, but I mean it when I do." "I know," she said. I know that about you. It's one of the things that makes it—" She stopped. "Terrifying?" he offered. "I was going to say significant." "Same thing, I think." She laughed, genuine, unguarded, the kind she didn't always let him hear. He looked at her when she laughed the way she had looked at him when he smiled, like he was filing it, like it was something he wanted to have. He told her about his father. He had not talked about this with many people, she understood, from the way he spoke around it first, the careful approach of someone who had learned that this particular ground required proper footing. His father left for reasons that were never fully explained and had been only partially in contact since. Not absent entirely, worse somehow. Present at irregular intervals, arriving with the confidence of someone who expected to be welcomed and departing before the welcome had time to become reliable. "He came to my university graduation," Jinho said. "He took photographs. He left before the dinner." "Did you want him to stay for dinner?" "I wanted—" He stopped, started again. "I wanted him to ask if I wanted him to stay. The decision either way I could have accepted. The assumption that his presence was enough, that I should be grateful for whatever portion he offered, that I couldn't accept." Amara was quiet for a moment. "My father died when I was 7, she said. "I used to think that was the harder version, absence without ambiguity, but I think yours might be different," he said. "Not harder, different. The hardest kind of missing is when the person is technically still there." He looked at her. In the warm, lit space of the small restaurant, with the street going dark outside and the last of the tea cooling between them, she saw the specific relief of being understood by someone who had not been informed of the facts, but had arrived there through attention. Yes, exactly that. She put her hand over his on the counter. She had not planned it. It wasn't a statement, or it was one, but not a loud one, just a placement, just, "I am here, and I am not leaving." He turned his hand over so his palm met hers. Neither of them said anything. Outside, the last of the Friday night foot traffic passed in peaceable oblivion. The restaurant owner wiped the counter at the far end. The city held its ordinary size around them, and they were two people sitting in it with their hands together and the full weight of what they were to each other finally settled, unspoken, somewhere below language. "I need to tell you something," Amara said. "Tell me." "I threw away the first heat pack. The one from the first morning, the cafe. I kept it in my coat pocket for an embarrassing amount of time, and then I moved it to my new coat when I bought the proper one, and then last week I finally threw it out." "Why are you telling me this?" She looked at their hands. "Because I kept it because I was afraid. I kept it as evidence, almost, that the beginning happened, that it was real. And I threw it out because," she lifted her eyes to his, "because I don't need the evidence anymore." He was very still for a moment, the kind of still that wasn't blankness, but the opposite, fullness, everything present. "Amara," he said, Jinho, I have something to tell you, too. Tell me. I told my mother about you before I called you back, the Tuesday, after the wrong number, before I looked you up in the directory. I told her I had called a stranger by accident and that she had invented a Nigerian law to keep me on the phone. You told your mother about me before you called back? She asked who I was smiling at my phone for. You were smiling at your phone. I was trying not to. It didn't work. She looked at him for a long moment, this careful, warm, structurally minded man who had been carrying her in his mother's kitchen since the first accidental Tuesday, who had chosen and kept choosing without announcement, who had told his brother the uncomfortable true thing and her mother the honest answer, and his sister he was proud of her before a flight because some things needed to be said one more time. Jinho, she said. Yes, I am so glad you dialed wrong. He looked at her, the full look, nothing held back. So am I, he said. Every day I am. The restaurant owner cleared his throat pointedly at the far end of the counter. They looked up. He gestured at his watch. They looked around and realized they were the only ones left. They paid and walked out into the Seoul night, the proper winter colds now, December arriving ahead of schedule, and she did not take her hand from his as they walked, and he did not offer her a heat pack because she finally had a coat that was warm enough, and they walked through the city they were both still learning with their whole futures ahead of them, and their hands between them, and everything said that needed saying.
The idea came from BC, which should have been the first warning. A dinner, BC said, standing in Amara's kitchen on a Saturday morning in December with the confidence of someone who had already decided. Both families, all of them, together, here. Amara turned from the stove. Say that again slowly. A dinner, both, BC. Hear me out. I don't think I should. His mother already likes you. Your mother already likes him. The brother is the only outstanding variable, and the brother just needs to see that this is real in 3 dimensions, not in a group chat photo. BC spread her hands as though presenting a completed architectural drawing. You cook, he brings his family, we solve the problem in 1 evening. That is not how problems are solved. That is exactly how problems are solved. You put everyone in a room with food and nobody can be dramatic because it's rude to be dramatic when someone has cooked. His brother is in Busan. Train tickets exist. My mother goes back to Lagos on Thursday. This is Wednesday. Perfect timing. Amara stared at her. You have lost your mind. I have found my mind, BC said, stealing a piece of the fried plantain cooling on the paper towel beside the stove. This is what a found mind looks like. Call Jinho. She called Jinho. There was a silence on his end that she had learned to read specifically. Not the warm silence, not the processing silence, but the silence of a man who could see both the logic and the catastrophe in something simultaneously. BC suggested it, she said. That explains the ambition of it. Tell me it's a bad idea. It's a high-risk idea, he said carefully. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed, it's not. A pause. My mother would come. My brother, I can ask, I can't promise. My mother flies Thursday morning. If we do this, it has to be tomorrow night. I know. Another pause, the thinking kind. Amara, do you want to do this? She looked around her Seoul kitchen, the small space she had made hers over 10 months, the plantain on the paper towel, BC perched on her counter eating it without permission. She thought about sitting at the cafe on a Tuesday that began with a wrong number. She thought about weight and gravity. She thought about the heat pack she had finally thrown away and the hand she hadn't let go of walking home in the cold. I want to stop managing it from a distance, she said. I want it to be real in 3 dimensions. Then we do it, he said. I'll call my brother. She cooked for 6 hours. Jollof rice, the real version, the party version, the fire adjusted 3 times to get the bottom catch exactly right. Fried plantain, peppered chicken her mother had taught her at an age when she was too young to understand she was being given something important. And chin-chin, double the batch, the recipe she had written out for his mother but never actually delivered, now finally made in the quantity it deserved. Jinho arrived at 4 to help, which meant he stood in her kitchen asking useful questions and handing her things before she knew she needed them, and staying completely out of the way without being asked. She had learned this about him. He read spaces. He knew when to fill them and when to leave them exactly as they were. The brother called back, he said, while she adjusted the flame under the jollof. And? He's coming. She exhaled. How did you convince him? Jinho was quiet for a moment. He handed her the wooden spoon before she reached for it. I told him what I told you at the tteokbokki place, about weight and gravity. A beat. And then I told her that she keeps heat packs in her coat pocket and stayed in a cafe for 2 hours after closing time because we hadn't finished talking. He paused. I told him I have never once had to wonder whether she meant to show up. She always means to show up. Amara did not turn from the stove. The jollof needed watching, and that was a genuine reason, and not at all because her eyes were doing something she wasn't prepared to manage in front of a person. You told him that? She said. I told him I wanted him to come and see for himself. He can draw his own conclusions. She stirred the rice. She felt him behind her, close, the specific warmth of him that she had mapped without deciding to, the exact distance that was near enough and not intrusive. His hand came to rest at the small of her back, light, warm, a placement rather than a claim. Amara, the jollof is fine. Jinho, I need to say something. Now? Before everyone arrives and it becomes complicated to say. She turned the flame to low and turned to face him. He was close, the crowded kitchen, the small space, his face at the distance of something decided. She had seen him decide things before. She knew the look of it. I love you, he said. The kitchen was very quiet. I know the timing is, don't apologize for it, she said. I'm not apologizing, I'm acknowledging. Jinho, she looked at him, the careful, careful man who had brought a spare heat pack to a first meeting and told his mother before he called back and said the uncomfortable true thing to his brother and framed love in terms of structural integrity. I love you, she said. I have been trying not to say it for approximately 6 weeks because I was waiting until I was sure I could say it without immediately needing to run somewhere. Are you sure now? I'm still slightly terrified. That seems appropriate, he said. She laughed, the unguarded one, the one he collected, and he put his arms around her in her small Seoul kitchen, and she let herself be held by him, the full weight of it, with the jollof at a low flame behind them and the city outside in 6 hours before everyone arrived. Everyone arrived. His mother came first, bearing a container of japchae and the chin-chin tin, washed and repurposed, now holding homemade yakwa that she presented to Amara's mother within 3 minutes of meeting her with the straightforward confidence of a woman offering a treaty. Amara's mother accepted it with both hands, the Ghanaian way, and something passed between the two women that no one else in the room could fully read, but everyone could feel. BC told the story of the wrong number to Jisoo with the narrative enthusiasm of someone who had been saving it for exactly this audience. He listened with the expression of a man trying not to be charmed and losing it. He looked her up in the tenant directory, BC said. Jisoo looked at his brother. You did? It was efficient, Jinho said. It was romantic, BC corrected. Those are not mutually exclusive, Amara said from the kitchen doorway, carrying the jollof, and both mothers looked at her with the matching expressions of women who had raised people worth something. The jollof was received the way good jollof is always received, with immediate silence, then involuntary sounds, then questions. His mother wanted to know about the fire. Her mother wanted to demonstrate the proper way to achieve the bottom catch, which led to both mothers standing at Amara's stove while Amara and Jinho stood in the hallway and watched through the kitchen doorway. They're cooking together, Amara said. Yes, in my kitchen. Your kitchen seems to be handling it. Jinho, our mothers are cooking together in my kitchen. I know. He looked at her, the quiet smile, the one she had collected from the beginning. Is that frightening or... It's wonderful, she said. It's completely wonderful and very overwhelming. He took her hand.
In the hallway, with the sound of two mothers arguing about fire levels in a mixture of Korean and Twi and English, with BC's laughter carrying from the living room, and Jisoo's lower voice responding, actually responding, warming by degrees, Jinho held her hand and she held his, and the evening held them all. The callback came at the end of the night, as callbacks always do when it was least expected and most needed. Everyone was leaving. Coats, shoes, the specific ceremony of a good evening ending. His mother embraced Amara at the door with the warmth of someone who had made a decision and was at peace with it. Her mother held Jinho's face between her hands, the gesture she had been building to all evening, the Ghanaian grandma move that Amara had warned him about but that landed on him like something he had not known he needed, and said, "You are a serious person. I can see it. Take care of my daughter." "I will," he said. Steady, certain, meeting her eyes. She patted his cheek twice and released him. He looked slightly undone. Amara loved him for it. Jisoo was last. He stopped at the door and looked at Amara, then at his brother, back at Amara. "The jollof," he said. "Yes." "The burnt bottom part." "The party." "He told me about it, the food and the community, the way it doesn't taste the same alone." She looked at him. "He remembered that?" Jisoo almost smiled. "He remembers everything about you. He always has." He put his coat on. "I was wrong to be afraid of something I hadn't seen yet. I've seen it now." He left. The door closed. The apartment went quiet in the way it only goes quiet after it had been full. Amara stood in the middle of her living room, looking at the beautiful wreckage of the evening. The dishes, the repurposed tin that had traveled between kitchens, the chairs pulled out of their careful alignment by people who had settled into them. Jinho was still there. He hadn't left. "You're still here," she said. "I'm still here." "You could have gone with them." "I could have," he agreed. He looked around the room, the evidence of the evening, the full and complicated and entirely real thing they'd built tonight. "Do you want me to go?" She looked at him, the man who called at dawn and brought a spare heat pack, and looked her up in the directory and said "not yet" and meant everything in the pause between words, and had stood in her hallway holding her hand while their mothers argued about fire. "No," she said. "I want you to help me with the dishes." He laughed, the full one, the one that still surprised him, the one she had landed in her sternum before she was awake enough to feel anything. She had been collecting it for months. She planned to collect it for considerably longer. "The dishes?" he said. "That's what I said. Very romantic. I'm a practical woman. You invented Article 12 of Nigerian law at 6:47 in the morning. That was practical. I needed 30 more seconds." He walked into her kitchen, their kitchen tonight, and turned the top on. She picked up the first dish and stood beside him. And outside the Seoul winter held its cold and indifferent ground, and inside it was warm, specifically and deliberately warm, the kind of warmth that doesn't arrive by accident, but by someone deciding to bring it and keep bringing it, morning after morning, wrong number after wrong number, Saturday after Saturday, all the way to here. Drop a comment. Did they deserve each other? Because I think they absolutely did. And if you found this story tonight by accident, maybe that's your version of a wrong number. The subscribe button is right there. We tell love stories like this every week. Don't miss the next one.